With the FIA presidential elections later this year, there's been a lot of attention on the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem and his controversial running of Formula One's governing body. Despite campaigning on promises of staying uninvolved with Formula One, Ben Sulayem has constantly interfered with the sport, removing the driver's freedom of speech, over-involving himself in race day proceedings, and at times attempting to change the outcome of races. Despite the controversy and criticism that has surrounded him throughout his tenure, his role reaches far further than Formula One, and he is a strong favourite to be re-elected later this year. And now, despite everything that has happened, Toto Wolff has backed Ben Sulayem's management style in what is a shocking move from the Mercedes team principal. Today, I'll check out the controversial moves that Ben Sulayem has been doing recently, why Toto Wolff likes what the FIA president is doing, and talk about how he might lose the presidential election later this year. So don't go anywhere. Mohammed Ben Sulayem has spent much of the past year or so stacking the FIA with people he knows will support him. He's removed those who would speak out against him, silenced any who might consider it, and ruled the FIA with an iron fist. He was recently accused by some within the organization of having a reign of terror. Of course, he denied that, and instead suggested the governing body's member clubs are smiling about the prospect of him serving another 4 years. His reign of terror, as Tim Mayer described it, has included a number of controversial decisions, including, but not limited to, banning drivers from swearing, banning drivers and teams from criticizing the stewards' decisions or the FIA, removing those within the FIA who've spoken out against him, trying to seal the FIA off from the outside world with stricter NDAs, creating an unregulated fund for him to use at his discretion, which is paid for by the FIA, being investigated for changing the result of an F1 race, among numerous other decisions he's made during his time. The mass sackings have been particularly worrying. The list reads as a who's who of Ben Sulayem's opposition. These include, but are definitely not limited to, former senior steward Tim Mayer, Chief Executive Officer Natalie Robin, FIA F1 Race Director Niels Wittich, Compliance Officer Paolo Bazzari, and the head of the Audit Committee, Bertrand Badere. Those last two were trying to stop the misspending of FIA funds amounting to millions of dollars by the FIA president. Robert Reid resigned from his position as the FIA Vice President for Sport in March over what he described as a standards breakdown at the FIA. Last week, Ben Sulayem made further sackings as he continued to try and stack the organization with those who would be staunchly supportive of him. Britain's representative on the FIA Senate, Ben Cousins, had been on the Senate for 3.5 years after supporting Ben Sulayem's candidature for president of Motorsport's governing body, before being removed by Ben Sulayem last week. He has been replaced by Azerbaijani Anar Alakbarov, known as a supporter and ally of Ben Sulayem. Ben Sulayem stacking the Senate with people who are supportive of him is important because of the function of the Senate. The Senate is the FIA body responsible for financial oversight and governance structure. Cousins told BBC Sport, "I received correspondence from the president saying he was appointing my successor. He gave no reason why, and there was no timeline as to when this would happen." Cousins did say that he didn't think he'd done anything to cross Ben Sulayem, saying, "As far as I'm aware, I haven't fallen out with him." But he had pushed back against the removal of transparency within the organization. Ben Sulayem had tried to force the FIA Senate to sign a stricter non-disclosure agreement regarding FIA business, which would have stopped anyone from talking about what happened at the meeting outside of Senate meetings. Cousins' removal comes just weeks after a change to the rules regarding how the FIA Senate is composed, which was made at the FIA General Assembly. The change gave the FIA president the power to appoint or dismiss the required 4 independent and qualified members of the Senate. Previously, the president could only propose their appointment or removal, which required confirmation by the remaining 12 members. The reason given by the FIA president for the change was to provide more flexibility in having the expertise required for the many and varied topics the Senate has to deal with, and which may require an urgent decision. Few were convinced by the reasoning given, though. It was a fairly obvious power grab by Ben Sulayem, which would allow him to further stack the Senate with his own supporters, giving him almost complete power over the decision-making of the organization. It is the latest move in Ben Sulayem's iron fist management of the FIA, but it is a management style that Toto Wolff supports. Like many in the FIA paddock, Wolff hasn't always been in agreement with what Ben Sulayem is doing, but his recent comments were a shocking show of confidence in the FIA president. Before I talk about that though, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch more news and analysis on the current F1 season, or a deep dive into what's happening in the sport, like our recent video on the future of Red Bull racing now Horner is gone, then make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. This week, quotes from Toto Wolff which seem to support Mohammed Ben Sulayem's management style of ruling with an iron fist have surfaced. "You can't deny that he's ruling with an iron fist," Wolff told selected Austrian media during the Austrian Grand Prix. "He doesn't let anyone tell him what to do, and that can have its advantages." One of the topics that Wolff thought Ben Sulayem had handled well was the recent swearing ban. It was a decision that Ben Sulayem recently had to walk back on after the World Rally Championship drivers shunned their media duties in protest against the new rule. "I think his stance on swearing is right," Wolff said. "Many of the drivers who scream on the radio don't speak English as their first language. If a French or Italian driver says, 'Go and F yourself' on the radio and thinks it's normal, it's probably because he's heard it that way since his karting days. But if you translate it literally into his native language, it can actually shock him." It is a stance which is in complete opposition to that of Mercedes driver George Russell, who, as the head of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, has been very outspoken against the new rules. Wolff also made a U-turn on his stance against an 11th F1 team. He had been one of the loudest opposers to adding another team to the grid, complaining that it would reduce the amount of money the current 10 teams make from F1. But Wolff conceded that Ben Sulayem probably got it right with the 11th team. A Cadillac's work team, Wolff now believes, is good for the sport, so something positive came out of it, amid Ben Sulayem's push for an 11th team on the F1 grid. Wolff's quotes are a reminder that while the majority of fans would like to see Ben Sulayem replaced later this year, support for the current FIA president is still strong within the sport and the wider motor racing community, but that hasn't stopped some opposition from emerging. Tim Mayer, one of Ben Sulayem's high-profile firings late last year, has put himself into the running for FIA president in the elections at the end of this year. Mayer said his decision to stand was not personal, but, citing what he said were a series of concerns with the current leadership, added that the FIA could do better for the members' clubs of the FIA, for the motorsport community and the mobility community in general. In terms of governance of Formula One, which is a thing that you probably care about the most, there are few more qualified than Tim Mayer. He has decades of experience in motorsport, having worked for 15 years as a race steward in F1 and in leadership positions in championships in the US, including IndyCar and the IMSA and American Le Mans series. In his announcement as a presidential candidate, Mayer outlined what he could offer to the FIA, but also went on the attack against Ben Sulayem, trying to present himself as a strong figure who wouldn't grab power in the same way that the current president has. Mohammed ran on some very good ideas, listening to small clubs, Mayer said. He promised that he would be a non-executive president. He promised transparency, and he has delivered on none of that. In fact, he's gone completely the opposite direction. We have the illusion of integrity, and what we've seen is wave after wave of statute changes, which are designed to concentrate power in one office, which is the exact opposite of what he promised when he was running. While Mayer might seem like a strong candidate, he will have his work cut out to overthrow Ben Sulayem. The Emirati ex-rally driver has spent 4 years strengthening his position within the organization, filling it with his supporters and stacking the odds in his favor. It will take an impressive campaign from Mayer and his team if he is to win in December's election. Would you like to see Tim Mayer take over from Ben Sulayem? And what do you think of Toto Wolff throwing his support behind Ben Sulayem? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.